Vivek, my friend, thank you so much for joining the Winning Teams interview series. As you know, we really want to bring a spotlight to highlight the real stories, the real work you and our amazing Executive MBA cohort students are engaged in as leaders, as contributors, as experienced people who do real things and really, bring these learnings into action. You have such a rich experience across industries, of course, as you will share more, in your really rich experience of consulting across different industries, across different contexts. There are so many learnings that can be transferable, so many practices that people, leaders, future leaders will love to learn about, and I would love to bring those stories to life with you sharing those stories. So maybe we'll just start first also for the audience to hear a little bit about your background, your role, anything you would like to share just to give it a little more context.
Sure. Happy to do that, Yigal. And thank you for inviting me, to this initiative. I'm really excited to be part of it. I'm Vivek, part of EMBA 27. For those who are familiar with the MIT way of introducing, it's 1527, right? I'm a commercial leader at Cognizant Technology Solutions, and I'm part of the life sciences industry vertical. So as a commercial leader, I help some of the largest pharma and med device companies globally to define and successfully execute on their business and technology transformations. So that's what I've been doing for the last 2 decades, and I'm happy to share my experiences with you.
Wow. 2 decades experience in such a significant market segment and across different contexts, different companies. That's amazing. I'm sure there are so many learnings. So let's start. First of all, it's all about winning teams and what really makes those teams so successful in winning consistently over time, having lasting impact, whether it's societal impact, commercial, like you said, and beyond that. So if you can share a little bit, first of all, context of the winning team, or one maybe winning team to start with, that you would like to focus on and share some transferable key takeaways, or even bring that to life, those experiences that made that team, really successful.
Sure. What I tell my clients always is we are in the business of making our clients win. So every team has been a winning team, right? And there have been plenty of lessons that I've learned from every engagement that I have been a part of in all these years. Before I get down to a specific winning team, I can probably share some observations or learnings that I've had over the years, right? The first one is that change is the only constant across industries, right? And life in general, right? And I joke with my team saying that, in the dark, your shadow may leave you, but change will not, right? So you just have to embrace it. The next one is technology, right? So there was a time, way back when we started working with clients, technology was viewed as cumbersome, right? Sometimes people used to complain. They used to be like, I can do this faster without this technology. I can do it better without technology. This is actually hindering my performance. Then came a time when people became extremely dependent on it. Technology was the backbone of business, right? You couldn't do without it, right? People wanted the latest and greatest, software and technologies at work. Then came a time when people became apprehensive about technology. I think we are still going through that phase, right? We are the fag end of the phase, but we are still there. Where we were apprehensive, we were like, technology is going to take away our work, right? And we've also transitioned into a time, I think we are in this transitory phase where we have come to realize this technology is here to stay. There's no point resisting it. Instead, we need to embrace it. And the sooner we embrace it, in fact, the leaders or the innovators are the ones who've actually preempted and led that change of embracing technology rather than, following it, right? So this is what I've, observed, across my 20 years of working with, different, clients. And I would say winning teams have been teams that have embraced change proactively and also embraced technology and the power of technology. I would say these are the two learnings as well as the two factors that have defined winning teams to me. And several examples that I can go on from my experience, but happy to delve as you need.
That sounds, first of all, very interesting in terms of how we identify these two factors that really drive that winning team performance across the experiences, right? Like, what is this common thread that leads to the winning team? What are the essential conditions? You're saying there is something about embracing the change, something about really leveraging the technology in a way that will maybe multiply even your impact, your commercial success, as opposed to kind of seeing, AI is now taking the jobs, AI is doing things, and it may be, my job will be replaced or someone else, right? And it's basically like seeing that as an opportunity and basically saying, look, I can, there are certain opportunities that come with those new technologies. There are certain things we need to do, but as long as the mindset is a growth mindset, so the mindset is like, yes, we will, we need to act on that now, and there is the opportunity for us, and where are those opportunities? So this is something that you say like will be kind of a defining factor, defining kind of a property quality of those teams to embrace the change, and as opposed to saying like that's a barrier, that's a blocker, like how we actually trying to get kind of rid of that thing, but trying to embrace that. So that's great. Like you're saying, real stories, real kind of cases. I think everybody will appreciate to hear and how those really come into the play in real life through real. I mean, you're doing a lot of consulting work.
Absolutely. So I can think of a recent engagement that we just concluded. It was at a pharma company, and this organization was trying to re-architect the IT organization to better align with their growth plans. Right? So they felt that the IT organization needed some changes, to be able to help them move forward in the marketplace. And so they invited us to do an end-to-end analysis and come up with a plan, and also work with them at executing the plan. So broadly, there were 3 changes, that we suggested. The first one was a change in their operating model. The next one was a change to their workflow systems and tools. And the third was a change to their vendor ecosystem. So these are 3 strategic changes, which we had to implement for them to get realigned and ready to support the organization's growth. Mm-hmm. And if I just delve a little bit into each of these 3 areas, the first one is operating model, right? It's about a new organizational structure, new roles and responsibilities, potentially new people that you'll be reporting to, and optimized headcount, and new process flows, right? And new governance models, right? That's a lot, right? In just the first lever. The second one, if you look at workflow systems, it's new technologies and platforms, right? And when you look at new technologies and platforms, there are some groups which have used technology. So for them, it's about migrating from the existing workflow tools and platforms into a new one. And there are some who've just not used technology. So it's about, just becoming literate in the first place, and then, starting to adopt, a new platform and technology. And the third one was around the vendor ecosystem. So you're used to working with a certain ecosystem, with certain vendors from certain countries, and now you're going to have to change that, right? Work with a completely new vendor. So there's a new adaptation to the culture and ways of working and processes and systems as well. So it was a lot of change, coming their way. And I would say what helped this organization, really, embrace these changes successfully were 3 things. As part of the change strategy, there were 3 implicit elements that we introduced. And this is something which we as Cognizant do in every engagement. This is a part of our change strategy. So the 3 implicit entities, I would compare them to the brain, the heart, and the limbs, right? So when you're driving change, you're dealing with humans. And so they have to have these three elements. So when it comes to the brain, and if I have to give an example from this engagement, it is about identifying what is the best platform out there and why does that new platform fit into this new strategy which they're trying to execute, right? So we identified a new system. It was a cloud-based platform. It was one of the most prominent platforms out there in the market for this function. It made a lot of economic sense as well in terms of the licensing fee. And given it was cloud, it did not require any on-the-ground support, right? So in every way, when you analyzed it, it made a lot of sense. And that's what the brain is about. It's about coming up with an intelligent, data-driven, well-thought-through strategy. But when we did a dipstick, before we implemented the solution, we sensed a lot of apprehension from the ground. And when we looked under the hood, we found that there were two groups of people. There was one which was technologically challenged. They were not used to using technology in the first place. They were still working with pen and paper. So for them to even adopt a platform was a big deal. So there was a lot of apprehension out there. And then there was another group which was not in favor of adopting this platform, primarily because this tool was going to eradicate those jobs. So for example, it was a cloud-based platform. So the software would be managed by the provider, right? There was no need for an in-house technology support team. So these groups realized that they were going to have to be retrained or reassigned or maybe even lose their jobs.
So great, there is a change coming at us. What would it mean for us now? What are the implications? And they're very significant.
Exactly. Okay. So that's got to do with the heart, right? Yeah. So where you had a great idea, vetted through strategy and research, but you also have to look at the emotions, the underlying apprehensions, fears, the drivers, what's going to motivate people to adopt your change versus, resist the change, right? So that's where the heart comes in. And finally, it's the limbs, right? So when you're trying to implement the change, you can't just take a solution and hand it over to somebody and say, go do it, right? You need to understand whether they are ready and they know, and they have, the infrastructure to be able to go about executing, adopting the change. And you need to work with them. You need to be able to hold their hands and take them through that journey, help them cross that bridge. So these are three, key entities, I would say. And I call these implicit entities because we don't really, on paper, call it out as the brain and the heart and the limbs. But these are the key elements of our change strategy, which helped us successfully implement the change in this organization. So I hope that helps.
That's such a powerful analogy, by the way. So the brain's the strategy, the analytical approach. We've done the analysis. This is the report, and it goes deep, and it makes sense. But then you're saying you need to understand the human factor, the implications, the heart, how you win their hearts, and how you make it make sense. But also, of course, there is a commercial, there is a reason why this transformation, is needed, right? So there is that process. You cannot necessarily go, back and revert that. There is something that needs to happen, and now you're basically setting the stage. So essential condition, don't just assume it's just all about strategy. Like the three lenses
Absolutely.
We study here, the strategic, cultural, and political. But I think you have such a powerful analogy to say, yes, those are three lenses. But in the consulting work, when you actually not only proposing the change, and you've done all the analytical work for that, there is that hard part, and there is the actual almost co-ownership of the ability to implement that. And that's because, as we all know, execution, at the end of the day, it's all about the ability to actually deliver on that execution. Many times, this is where these transformations really fail, or at least don't deliver the promise.
Results. Yeah.
Right. So it's what I really like to hear more. If you can share, what skills, essentially, what human skills are needed to actually be able to drive that process, right? So you're saying there is the brain, there is the heart, the hands, what skills come into the play, when you really, on such, like I say, winning team like you said, it's not just your own team, essentially. It's your team by extension is your customer. So that's the winning, almost extended team that needs now to execute on the strategy. So what skills, human skills, come into the play to really make it successful?
Just one word comes to my mind, that's empathy. So I think when you're trying to drive a change, you need to put yourself in the shoes of the person who's going to be impacted, or the persons who are going to be impacted by the change. And if you can put yourself in the shoes of every stakeholder that's being impacted by the change, and look at the change through their, from their vantage point, you'll be able to successfully drive the change. So it starts with first communicating, right? So if you know what's in their mind, if you know what is holding them back, or if you know what they need to be able to be successful, you'll be able to communicate it appropriately, right? And if you know what's going to hold them back from actually adopting and executing and getting the maximum value of their change, you will know what interventions are needed, from your end to be able to facilitate, that change. So empathy is all that's needed, right? As much as I tell my teams, you can do strategy, right? You can do a lot of analytics. You can be extremely strategic about, your change management approach. But if you lack empathy, it falls through.
That's it. So you're saying empathy, it's not only thinking about the thinking of others, it's actually almost embracing what emotions it brings, how they will feel about that change, and how we can essentially help with the process, right? And then communicating that properly. But that first step is so critical. Communication,
Absolutely.
comms, in organizations sometimes, can be just, very, like you said, analytical, kind of, okay, we do this, why, and this is what. But it's typically, like, it's very, I would say, it's not maybe more rare to kind of say, yeah, we lead with empathy. We actually doing much deeper dive, and we want to understand, and we want to know, and we actually now know and feel what you are going through, and this is how we can help, right? Because this is part of it. Like, leading with empathy is great as long as it will deliver on the business outcome, and as long as you have your people with you to actually deliver on that change. And you're saying there is something. If these communications can be, like very tactical, very kind of dry, but if you do the groundwork of the empathy, that's what's going to lead that successfully.
Absolutely. And I think empathy is what drives an employee to give his or her best to the organization, right? Everybody understands the disruptive nature of technology. Everybody understands, the disruptive nature of globalization itself, right? We all understand that. I mean, I don't think there's anybody who doesn't understand that. But it's the way you go about communicating the impact and helping them embrace that impact that makes a difference between an employer who's able to build that feeling of family and maximize the output of his or her employees versus not, right? So it all hinges, I think, on empathy. And I'm glad, you brought about these concepts which we learned in our first semester, right, around tattoo and LARB and the three lenses. When I came to MIT first, I thought this would be a very analytical program. And I was pleasantly surprised to find how much of importance was really given to the softer aspects of management. And I call them softer aspects, but these are actually extremely important and critical, aspects of management and leadership. We spent an entire semester, right, talking about the three lenses, organizational processes class, even in economics, right? When we went to study economics, little did I expect them to be talking about tattoo, right? I thought we were going to be talking about economic theory and all these fancy jargons. But it started off with the basics, tattoo and LARB, and that is what empathy is all about, right? Thinking about the thinking of others. And if you don't do that, you just cannot do business. And I think I'm glad you brought that up, Igel. I think that was a very pleasant surprise and a very key takeaway, I would say, so far for me from the EMBA program.
That's very insightful. So basically, like we are saying, leadership is so much, using your analogies, is so much not only about the strategy, about the brains, about, yes, that's where we need to go. If you don't embrace this other parts of discipline and principled and innovative leadership, you will be in a much better position if you consider all of those additional aspects and really, drive that. And like you're saying, economics, it comes from the game theory, not necessarily from the psychology, but then coupled with psychology and what the process that we're studying, it's such a powerful, not just toolkit, but such a powerful capability that we need to build as leaders to be able to really to drive those changes. It will be great to hear any examples you have for for other skills, what we call human skills, such as maybe creativity, innovation, how you drive. Many companies tend to kind of stick to their own kind of a status quo. That's our market, that's what we do, and then even the strong R&D arm of the large companies, will have significant barriers, blockers to be able to bring something to life that seem to be, that's beyond the conventional things we do here. Like why, would we need to do that? It sounds great, but maybe this like a startup thing. It's not. But what we are doing here. So if you had any of those experiences when actually, some creative ideas, some original solutions came into the play and actually made it to execution and the real business impact.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Several such examples. When we talk about diversity and inclusion, we just think about it as what's the right word? Just a nice to have, right? Just to have an equal ratio of men is to women, to have more representation from different cultures and different countries. A nice to have, more color in the organization. A lot of organizations view it that way. In fact, of late, I have seen organizations try to move away from their, diversity and inclusion, agendas, right? And I have personally experienced the power of diversity and inclusion in my teams. Traditionally, we used to hire engineers and who have a certain way of thinking, a certain approach to problem solving. And I realized that was stifling our ability to be creative about the solutions we were taking to our clients. Right? Our solutions were not differentiated anyway. It was as good as probably what my competitor would do, maybe with small changes, maybe some price or cost advantages, right? And at one point I took a decision that at least in my group I would diversify the educational backgrounds of my consultants. So we brought in more people with a history, background or education history. We brought people from the arts, creative arts. We even got somebody, who was a performing musician, right? Who had a master's in music. Of course, they had an analytical, bent of mind, because in consulting you need to be analytical, right? You need to know how to work with people. You need to know how to drive change. So those are some basics. But we moved away from that standard, traditional background. And I realized two things, started to happen after that diversification. The first one was we were able to connect with a broader base of clients, right? We were not only connecting with people who could speak the technical language that our analytical folks spoke, right? So that introduced us to a much larger customer base, and I saw the impact of that on my revenues, right? It's just not expected, right? You would think you have to have a great strategy, you need to have a great service catalog, you need to have great marketing collateral, but no, it was just about diversifying the portfolio and being able to connect with a broader set of clients, right? So that was the impact it had directly on my top line. And in terms of the quality of solutions and the quality of our engagements, which we measured through, our net promoter score, that also drastically changed, right? So coming back to what are the skills, right? I think diversity in your talent pool is extremely important. Now, I would say that you need to be intelligent about how you diversify, right? You don't diversify for the sake of diversification, but there is strength in diversification, and when you leverage that tool intelligently, there's a lot for your organization to benefit. So that's one point I would, and one example which I can give from my organization itself.
So by kind of a way of interpreting that, you're saying that there is something to the when your talent comes from different domains of knowledge, different experiences, right? So this diversification, this diversity brings also the capacity to go beyond the conventions, beyond the existing solutions, but also it translates to the ability to engage, to connect with the larger, with more essentially segments in the market, or more contact, more customers who potentially are looking for some of those additional kind of new capabilities that go beyond these conventions, and it's basically going to lead to diversification of your portfolio of those capabilities. And you see when you do that, so this is what can almost power your ability to build those more creative solutions and actually execute on those. If you kind of keep going with the same pool, so still you can have some original solutions come in, but it's less likely because there is a little bit of that mindset. Everybody kind of thinks alike, and it seems like we kind of working on the same. With the same toolkit, essentially, toolbox.
Absolutely.
So this intersection is essential. This is what we hear, even here in MIT, the infinite corridor, right? When people and ideas collide, and this is where innovation and some of those, abilities to drive, to go beyond just the conventions. So when engineers meet the EMBAs or MBAs from MIT Sloan and people from different disciplines that can come together and come up with amazing solutions that you would not think about this if you just apply your engineering approach or just your one very specific experience.
That's right.
This is great. First of all, this is great stories and very vivid, very practical. I think lessons from that for leaders or future leaders watching our conversation. What will be one key takeaway that you would like them to really embrace and think about, and that can be transferable across industries, right? You shared lots of examples from consulting and how you basically bring those transformation and the solution to life through holding the hands and really almost being accountable together with the customer. So that's I think this analogy was really amazing. But key takeaways to think about and embrace as they develop their leadership skills, that they become more and more of a principled and innovative leaders.
Yeah, I think as I grow up the ladder, I've realized that the most important leadership skill is empathy and your ability to drive change, right? Because you're going to have access to a lot of technical folks, right? No dearth of that, right? but it's your ability to bring people together, create that unified vision, to motivate them, help them, embrace change, work together, towards that goal, is what is going to drive your success, right? I mean, as a leader, you're not going to be, creating PowerPoints yourself. You're not going to be doing the market research yourself. You're not going to be doing your data mining yourself. You're not going to be, doing the engineering work yourself, right? You can always hire people to do all of this, but
hire people
bringing
and
it,
AI agents.
and AI
that will
agents
do some of that for you.
It's doing a lot of that, yeah. But it's orchestrating and bringing this together and moving them in the direction that you want to go. That is what a leader's job is, and I think you cannot do that unless you are empathetic and you know how to work with people. Which end of the day just comes back to empathy as a leader.
So really, really great insights. Anything else that we haven't touched on and you would like to share?
Thank you, Igal, for arranging this series. It's lovely, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Vivek. Thank you.